Welcome back. You're watching Business Today here on KTN News, and let's now take a look at other stories. The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, will hold the 7th Global Commodities Forum on the 15th and 16th of July in Nairobi as an integral part of the UNCTAD 14, that is the 14th one of its kind. Under the theme, Breaking the Chains of Commodity Dependence, participants are set to discuss how commodity-dependent developing countries can adapt to the twin shocks of lower commodity prices as well as shrinking demand from emerging economies so as to realize their national objectives and the 2030 agenda as well. Other areas of interest are challenges and opportunities in multilateralism for trade and development, promoting sustained, inclusive and sustainable economic growth through trade, investment, finance, as well as technology to achieve prosperity for all, among other issues that are going to be discussed during the 14th edition of the UNCTAD conference that is going to be happening here in Nairobi. And it's the second time it's coming to Kenya as well. I guess the first time it was here was before some of you were born. But now to help us understand, we'll put this into perspective in regard to some of the expectations. We are now joined by Kanini Mutuni, who is the Director for Investment, USAID East Africa and Investment Hub. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
A lot has been said about UNCTAD, but how is it going to benefit the ordinary Kenyan?
Yeah, thank you, Joy. Well, I think this time round, the theme is from decisions to actions. And the whole idea is let's start walking the talk. We've talked enough. Let's now move into actions. So the main aim of the UNCTAD 14 and the World Investment Forum will be to find clear strategies to actually get investment for funding the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. The annual investment required to achieve the SDGs is actually $39 trillion. I mean, that's a lot of money. And that is a global investment that's required. So what we're excited about in terms of this conference is that the private sector will come together with the public sector and government, policymakers to actually find sustainable strategies to actually fund this gap in terms of the SDGs.
All right. Well, the SDGs are being put out quite very strongly. And I know that last year we did move from the MDGs and then adopted the SDGs. But for African economies, we cannot say we actually managed to achieve most of the Millennium Development Goals. And now we are actually getting into trying to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And we're not so sure we're even going to get to 50% of achieving most of these goals, of the 17 goals. So how do we ensure that we put trade as one of the factors in helping developing economies like the ones we have on the African continent to help them, drive the development agenda?
Well, for us at the USAID East Africa Trade and Investment Hub and our partners Can Invest, we believe that what is required really is investment. Trade has to be coupled together with investment. And I think this is the challenge and the conversation that we plan to have next week. If you look at East Africa as a region, we have a population of almost 170 million people. This conference is going to help us actually put a real spotlight on East Africa as a potential investment destination. The World Economic Forum a couple of weeks ago named the East Africa region as one of the fastest growing regions in Africa and one of the most competitive. So we want to actually take all these great stories, showcase them to global investors and actually say this is actually going to be the best way to achieve the SDGs, through increased investment and increased trade.
Increased investment and trade. But then again, just like you said, there's too much talk and less action going on, especially on the African continent with our developing economies and emerging economies as well. So we recently had the World Trade Organization conference here in Nairobi. That was last year. And we're still trying to figure out what exactly was in it for a country like Kenya or just like the many African economies we have. And we're still trying to put a finger on what exactly could have directly impacted us. But then how do you think UNCTAD is going to impact our economies?
Yes, well, the approach that we're taking, I mean, it's a huge conference and we have so many stakeholders involved. The approach that we're taking at the USAID East Africa Trade and Investment Hub is we're having a number of side events which will be targeted at the private sector, and that will be focused on specific sectors where we think and believe that we can actually drive investment. And we think this is actually the best way to bring the conference to the people. Because I think, you have to move away from the plenary to actually move to a situation where you're actually focusing on real actions that the private sector can take. So our focuses will be on, say, the textiles and apparel sector, which we think is one of the great ways to promote job creation and employment throughout the entire East Africa region. We will also be focusing on financial services and the investment opportunities that exist within the region for institutions and for individuals as well. So I think that's how we've sort of approached it. Move away from the plenary, have real actions and real strategies to actually promote investment and show it to the people.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Kanini. We do appreciate the time taken to talk to us about the UNCTAD agenda and what is in it for us in regard to trade and investment. Kanini Mutoni is the Director Investment USAID East Africa and Investment Hub.